Hi everybody, hope you're all well. This is part 10 of 31 days in August. Yes, we are nearly a third of the way there. Today's comic is a really nifty little horror comic. Actually, it was from DC Vertigo, come out in around about the late 90s, and it was called Flinch. This is number 5. Now, if you've never heard of this one, it's an anthology comic. It's got 3 stories in each issue, and you had people in it like Jim Lee, Bruce Jones, Frank Quitely, Bill Shavankovich. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Bob Fingerman, Brian Azzarello, Garth Ennis, Kent Williams, John Lansdale. The list goes on and on. Phil Jimenez, Bruce Jones, Stephen T. Seagal. I mean, it went on for 16 issues. Sadly, it only went on for 16 issues. But the list of people that were writing and drawing on it were massive, absolutely massive. The list actually went on longer than the issues. In this tortured little tomb of tales. No, sorry. He doesn't come out until October the 31st. The first story we have by Joe R. Lansdale. Probably, if you yesterday's video was for Grimjack, who had I said about the artist for that, Timothy Truman. He was probably best known for most people for Jonah Hex miniseries that come out of DC Vertigo. Well, Joe R. Lansdale was the writer of those miniseries, so you can probably guess what we've got here. The title's called Betrothed, and how can I put this? Very delicate matter. It's about a man who's in love. He's in love with a woman who's dead. She's been murdered by a serial killer. He's hanging around the cemetery waiting for all the funeral goers to leave so he can dig up his beloved. He's never met her. He's only seen her in a picture in the newspaper that reported her being one of several women being murdered by this serial killer, the Greenville Ripper. She's not the first victim of the Greenville Ripper that he's dug up. In fact, he's near enough dug up every single victim of the Greenville Ripper. He takes his betrothed, because his intentions are to marry her, and seeing that somehow he's a minister as well. I'd imagine he's one of those internet ministers, those people that go online and get a certificate to say that they're legally able to marry people. As he's leaving the cemetery, he gets hit by a car. The driver of the car gets out and instantly recognises the body of the dead woman, because it's the Greenville Ripper. He recognises her as his last victim. As he looks over at the guy who dug her up, he muses to himself, what a complete sicko this is. Yeah, he might have tortured and murdered this woman when she was alive, but once they're dead, where's the fun in that? And he drives off into the distance, leaving the dead woman and the guy that dug her up lying in the middle of the road, both dead. Yeah, this sort of like speaks to my, I suppose you could say, twisted sense of humour. um, this is a typical story for Flinch. It really was no holds barred horror anthology comic, and like I said, it's a real shame that it only went on for 16 issues. The next story is called Peeping Bob, and it's by, sorry, you have to excuse me. It's by Colin Raff and James Romberger. It's about a guy who, he lives alone apart from his inflatable sex doll and the woman next door. He's got, now this is the bit that I find quite hard to believe. I know you could probably say it's something to do with artistic licensing, but he's got a hole in his wall. Oh, you alright, Kirby? Sorry, that's Kirby coughing there. Sorry, he's okay. You alright, mate? Yeah? He just likes people to know that he's here. You okay, buddy? Yeah? No, he's okay. Yeah, as I was saying, the one of the main characters in this story, Peeping Bob, he's got a hole in his wall which he uses to spy on his next door neighbour. Now, this hole has got to be at least as big as a fist, if not twice the size. How the woman who lives in the room next to him doesn't realise this hole's there, I don't know. But anyway, dispelling, hanging up my belief and my my rationality on the coat hanger. He spies on his next door neighbour whilst she's having sex with her boyfriend. He's been doing this for quite some time now, and one day he spies on them and he sees them, I can only say, partaking in acts of autoerotic asphyxiation, where the woman's boyfriend seemingly murders her. Bob, in a blind panic, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know whether to go to the police. If he goes to the police, that means he's going to have to admit that he's been spying on his neighbour, which nobody really wants to happen. Nobody really wants that to be found out about him, especially this guy. So he decides to be quiet about it. As the days progress, there's a power cut in his building, in his room. So he goes down to the basement to flick the switch on the fuse, when he sees the woman who was supposedly dead in the basement. She says that she faked her death. She pretended to be dead in front of her boyfriend because she was scared that he would actually properly try and kill her. Bob takes her back up to his room, and she explains to him everything that's going on between her and her boyfriend, and he explains to her that he knows what's happening, what's been going on between them, and he knows what happened that night because he's got this dirty great big hole. And I'm not serious, I'm not kidding you. In the actual comic book, the hole must be about that big. Yeah. So how, like I said, how they didn't notice, I mean, they must have been going like rabbits to not notice a hole that big in their wall. But anyway, his next door neighbour and Bob concoct this whole scheme of using a video camera to record her boyfriend and hopefully get some kind of confession out of him by using the hole in the wall. As Bob connects this video recorder to the hole, he's recording his next door neighbour's room when the boyfriend walks in with another woman. As the boyfriend enters the room, the other woman turns out to be the supposed dead next door neighbour. She turns around to her boyfriend and says, "Do you want to try that thing we did last night again?" Her boyfriend says, "Sure, no problem." Bob is completely confused about this whole situation. He doesn't understand. He turns to what he thought was his next door neighbour, only to find out that in front of his face she turns back into his inflatable sex doll. The video recorder records the next door neighbour and her boyfriend having a conversation, and the girlfriend turning around to her boyfriend and saying, "This time you pretend to die." Now, that's a pretty creepy story. Not only is it creepy because of the fact that you've got this guy who's spying on his next door neighbour, but it's also creepy enough to think that he, you know, you through the whole story, you're thinking to yourself, "Yeah, this poor woman. She's obviously, you know, almost been murdered, and this guy's saved her." But it turns out it's not his next door neighbour, it's his inflatable sex doll. So you've got to ask yourself, was he totally imagining the fact that his next door neighbour was there and his sex doll was his next door neighbour? Or was his sex doll, in some strange, weird, horror story way, jealous of the fact that he was spying on his next door neighbour and somehow managed to transform itself to look like his next door neighbour? I mean, it is a really, I mean, when you see the last few panels of the story, where what you first thought was his next door neighbour and turns out to be the sex doll, when her head turns around 180 degrees to face him, and then slowly turns back into the face of the inflatable doll, it is a really creepy story, almost worthy of TV programs like The Twilight Zone or Outer Limits or, you know, Tales from the Crypt. The next story is called Fumes. This is about a guy who is a multi-billionaire in fact. He runs a company that is polluting the atmosphere. Well, I'll tell you who wrote it. It's by Mark Wheatley and Mark Hempel. Okay. This guy who's running this business is polluting the atmosphere. He's poisoning the water. He's poisoning the air. Fumes are coming out of his building, out of his factory every single day, and he's been told that he's not allowed to do this. He's been told he has to stop, because if he doesn't stop, then, you know, things are going to go bad for the planet, bad for the people around there, and bad for him. He goes to bed not thinking anything of it. He's got money. What does he care? What does he care about the environment? What does he care about other people? He's rich. He owns this company. Who cares? He wakes up the next morning and he can smell something. He can smell something really weird. He's washing himself, but he still feels like he can still smell himself. His body odour. He makes himself breakfast. He opens up a fresh carton of milk, but it stinks horribly, as if it's about 3 weeks off sell-by date. As he's driving along, he can smell the fumes of his car, as they're coming out of the exhaust pipe. It gets to a point where the smells are so unbearable that he accidentally crashes his car into a patch of flowers, and as he staggers out of his car and falls to the ground next to the flowers, the smell of the flowers is so strong that it completely overwhelms him, and he's almost violently sick because of it. It gets so bad for him that the only way he can stand being anywhere is by having an oxygen mask with an oxygen tank attached to it to breathe the air. He can't stand breathing normal air. He goes home with the oxygen mask on, but still it's no good. His home stinks. It smells vile. He scrubs the walls, he scrubs the floors, he scrubs himself. It gets to a point where he ends up pulling his own fingernails and toenails out because of the smell that's under him, of all the grime and grit and sweat and skin cells that are rotting underneath his fingernails and his toenails. It's so bad that he has to pull them out to clean underneath them. His sense of smell is just inflated exponentially. He eventually goes back to where he works, but all he's wearing is his underpants. He's completely clean shaven. He has got the oxygen mask strapped to his face with duct tape. He's warning the people that who used to be his employees, he's warning them that they need to shut down the factory because he can smell the pollution. He can smell what it's doing to the planet and to the people around him. He ends up getting carted away. As he gets carted away, his vice president turns around to him and says, "No, I'm sorry, but we're not going to close the plant down. You're a nutter. You're obviously a nutter." His last words to him was, "I can smell that you've got something wrong with you. You should take your prostate out. You're not going to be long. You're not going to be around for long if you don't check your prostate out. You've got something wrong with you." His vice president just turns around and says, "Nah, ignore him. He's gone completely nuts." And the last panel shows him being carted away in a white wagon with a straitjacket around him. It's a really interesting story, especially nowadays when you think about, the pollution that's in the air, still in the air. I mean, people, yes, there's all this, all these all these treaties and that have been signed by all the governments around the world, or most of the governments around the world, but there's still pollution in the air. People are still getting poisoned. People are, there's even a theory that one of the reasons why people, and especially children, are getting so big is because of the growth hormones that animals are being pumped through to make their meat more tender for people to eat. I mean, stories like this are always going to be poignant in people's psyches when they read them because of the amount of pollution that people have created in the world. On the whole, as a series, I remember Flinch being a really good read. I mean, it didn't go on for long, unfortunately. Like I said, it only went on for 16 issues. I actually thought it went on for longer until I looked and saw how many copies I got, and then I checked on the internet, and yeah, it only went on for 16 issues. But as a horror anthology, it held its own. It was really good. It was probably the only horror anthology that was out there at that time. There was a few one-shot miniseries that DC did as well. There was Weird War Tales and Weird Westerns, which were both 4-issue miniseries that had 3 stories in each issue, and were also really good. if you can find any copies of Flinch around, I really do recommend you picking them up if you haven't got them and you're a horror comic fan. They were, all the stories were, had a very weird twist to them, and they were all quite contemporary. They were all really, you know, up to date sort of horror stories. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend. I mean, so far I've done, this is my 10th video for these reviews, and so far every comic I've reviewed, I've recommended. I'm not saying that every comic I have is a good comic, but at the moment, luckily enough, the comics that I've been reviewing have been really good. I mean, it's like I said, what's the point of reading a comic or keeping a comic if it's not a really good comic? Saying that, I probably do have some stinkers in there. Hopefully we won't get to them. So yeah, I've already put up the video for Saturdays and Sundays comics. This is the comic I will be reviewing on Saturday. Alpha Flights number 22. Meet Pink Pearl, such a nice lady. And there's North Star and Aurora on the front cover, being squished. And Sunday's comic will be Fantastic Four number 387. And as with all comics in the 1990s, it's die cut with some flashy, sparkly thing on the front cover. So I hope you'll join me with those. Thank you everybody who's been watching these videos. Thank you all for commenting. If you do comment on one of my videos and I don't answer you back, don't take it personally. I'm doing a lot of things around here at the moment, as well as doing every day-to-day things like working and that. So if I don't answer your comment when you make a comment on the video, like I said, don't take it personally. I'm not ignoring you. I just haven't got round to doing it yet. Okay. Thank you everybody who has taken part in my little comic book randomizer selection doohickey that I'm doing. If you want to, excuse me, if you have already given me numbers for the comics for next Saturday and Sunday, but you want to give me some more, that's fine. You can give me some more. If you haven't given any numbers yet, and you want to, not a problem. You know, the more numbers the better, really, the more fun it's going to be. And if you've already given numbers and I've picked your name out of the hat and I've already reviewed your comics, please give me more numbers. Like I said, the more the merrier. I've missed out on saying this on the end of these videos because thumbs it down, but don't just thumbs it down and run off. I won't say what I was going to say, but you know, don't just thumbs the video down. Say why you're thumbsing it down. Didn't you like the comic? Didn't you like the review? You know, have you got something that you think that should be added to what I said about the review or the information I've given you about it? It's called communication. It's what civilized people do. They communicate. They don't just thumbs down things and run off and hide. So yeah, thank you for watching everybody. This is part 10. Don't worry, there's only another 21 parts to go. It's going to fly by, I promise you. Yeah, take care, see you soon, and keep tuned in for tomorrow, or what's going to be today's comic book review. See you soon, ta-ta for now.